regularly speaks to groups of doctors, physicians' assistants, and nurse practitioners about topics surrounding women's health. Teresa co-hosts the podcast, The Hormone Genius, which has had 750,000 listens since 2020. On a recent podcast, Teresa's co-host, Jamie, described Teresa and herself as hope dealers. If you have listened to any of the podcasts, I'm sure you would agree that Teresa and Jamie provide hope and healing for many women. Teresa is one of the most humble and wise healthcare providers I know, and my desire for tonight is that you receive a bit of hope and encouragement for your journey. Please join me in welcoming Teresa Kenny.
Thank you so much. That was such a kind introduction by Katie, and I'm really appreciative of her inviting me to speak to you tonight. I'm really appreciative of the kindness that her family has offered and let me stay there tonight. I've had a busy couple days. I was at Benedictine College, yes, and then I stayed till 11 p.m. while I talked to many college girls just want to ask me further questions. And then today I got the opportunity to speak to your high school kids here at St. John's, to the girls individually in a group, and then I spoke to the boys and girls, and then I got to speak to the middle school. So what an incredible opportunity to be able to share what I think is really powerful and incredible information. Katie, you did want me to remind you about the heat, just in case that's relevant. She said it would be easier to hear if the blowers weren't going, and I can hear them. So, all right, being here and doing a lot of talks, I was telling Katie and her mom, sometimes when I've heard myself speak over and over again, I get a little tired of myself, So I was like, what do I want to talk to you ladies about? Because I've been talking to young people, college students, like, what do I want to talk to you ladies about? You obviously are a wonderful, beautiful group of people, and some of you have already kind of lived through your reproductive years. Some of you have not. I see little ones here. I've seen pregnant mamas here too. So it's hard when you have a group of women like this to know how much information do I give about what I want to share with you. Like, how much do you need to know about just the basics, the foundation? How much do I want to tell you about what's coming in the years ahead? And so just so you know, I want to tell you everything, but I probably won't be able to. And hopefully that will be good because you can ask questions and ask me whatever you want. And of course, you can listen to the 155 episodes of The Hormone Genius to get all of the rest of the details. A lot of times I'll tell people to go back to season 1 of The Hormone Genius because season 1 is what I call the foundational season. That means that if you don't already know about cervical mucus or how to know when the main event of your cycle is and how to interpret that and how to interpret your cycle and your hormones and all of the good things that go with that, you probably need to go back and listen to season 1. But I kind of assume that many of you here are beyond that point and you have that foundation, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of what you can do as women as you get older in years to really support your hormones and the balance of your hormones. This image here, I hope you enjoy this. This is St. Joan of Arc. And I was at Seek in Salt Lake City just, that was right around New Year's, or was on New Year's. And Jamie came up with this. We were going to wear these as t-shirts, but we never got them made. So I was like, well, I want to share this because I think it's great. Slaying Dragons and Balancing Hormones, St. Joan of Arc, because, the patron of Seek was St. Joan of Arc, and Jamie and I like to think of her when she was in battle of being in her estrogen phase. Right? Being in the estrogen phase of her cycle, and she was out there, fighting for her country and what women can do when their estrogen levels are high. So again, I've been doing nurse practitionering for almost 25 years now. I love it. I feel like God has called me to what I do, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a minute. But I spend most of my days working with women of all ages, all the way down to 10, 11 years old to 70 years old, because even 70-year-old women think they need help with their hormones. And I've had women come in almost at 90 years old, and it'll literally say on the appointment, wants to talk about hormones. And I'll look around and think, does she know she's 90 years old? You know, but every person on this earth cares about hormones because hormones are life. One of the things that Jamie and I did at Seek as well is we wore this backpack. I don't know where I put it. I think it's back in the other room. But on the back it says, ask me why hormones are cool. So that was our tagline or Seek. So we just wore these backpacks so that college kids would see it and hopefully come up to us and be like, so why are hormones cool? And, you know, that worked a little bit. It didn't work so much for me. In fact, I went to the March for Life a couple weeks ago, and I had random men on the street because I wore the backpack again, and they're like, so why are hormones cool? And I was like, oh my gosh, I really have to answer this question now to this old man. But so that was a fun way for us to get a conversation going. But I treat all sorts of things, you know, PMS, irregular cycles, PCOS, acne, all the things every day of my life. But there's a reason why I am so passionate about women's health. It actually comes from my heart. Like, it comes from, like, where I come from. And a lot of times when I speak to a group of young people, I often talk about origin, purpose, and destiny. It's my way of talking about theology of the body. Like, we all come from someone, right? We come from someone. And we all are called to a purpose in this life. And we ultimately all have a destiny. So I like every young person to frame their kind of mind around this idea that I have an origin and a purpose and a destiny. So when I grew up in this beautiful Catholic family, and this is me in my first communion, obviously. But I had a woman in my life who was a great influence to me, and that's my mom. A lot of our mothers are a great influence. This is my family. I was one of 6 siblings. My mom was a very devout Catholic, and she was also very, very prayerful and very pro-life. And so when I was young, my mom noticed that I also cared about my faith. And so I think she took an opportunity to kind of develop that in me. And when I was very young, in 7th and 8th grade, she would take me to 2 abortion clinics that were in Omaha at the time. Thankfully, those 2 are actually shut down. But I used to go and pray with my mom in front of the abortion clinic, just peacefully, in prayer. And at that time, I didn't really understand what was really going on. I knew what abortion was. My mom had told me that. I knew that a pregnancy was ending, that a life was being lost. But I oftentimes wondered, as I looked at those women that were going in the abortion clinic, what was going on with them? What was going on with the woman? And I was trying to understand, like, why these women were entering into this clinic that just seemed so terrible. It seemed so sad. It seemed so dark. It seemed so, like, not even a good place to go in. It seemed broken down, and, like, why would anybody want to go in there? So I was trying to wrap my brain around this, and you know, the issue of women and, like, understanding what would drive a woman to have to terminate her pregnancy was something that really, really hurt my heart and spoke to me. When I was 15, strangely enough, again, my mom, she had someone who had been to Medjugorje, Yugoslavia. I don't know if you know about Medjugorje, Yugoslavia, but at the time, there was apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and still are to this day, in this small little village way across the world. My mom sent me to Yugoslavia when I was 15, by myself, in a sense. No parents. I just went with a random group of other people. And I don't know why. We did not have a lot of money. My dad was a teacher. My mom stayed at home with us, so I know we didn't have a lot of money, but for whatever reason, at 15, my mom decided I should go to Yugoslavia. Well, like any pilgrimage, like any time in life where you're sent out to see faith across the world, it's a very important thing that will occur. I really wish that every 15-year-old could experience a pilgrimage like I did, because for the first time in my life, I got to see, what the church was in a way that wasn't in Omaha, Nebraska, in my little parish, St. Pius X, right? We don't really think about faith universally until you see it universally. And so I had this experience. This is me right here with this, again, group of lovely people. And this woman right here was pregnant with her 6th child. And her and her husband, Marty and Kathy were their names, were the cutest things ever. He brought a guitar to Yugoslavia, and whenever we would sit down to have a meal, he'd get his guitar out, and he'd sing to her, and they'd look at each other, and she was pregnant and so cute, and here I am, 15, looking at these people. I'm like, who are these people? They were so in love, and they're having their 6th baby. And I'll never forget, there was a night of prayer, and we were just sharing, as you do, in prayer groups like this, and she looked over at me and she said, Teresa, she's like, you're going to do something in life, and you're going to make a difference. I just know it. You're going to make a difference in young people's lives. And you know what? When someone says that to you, and you grew up in a family like mine, where my mother always said, to those who've been giving much, much is expected, I was like, well, I guess I better do something. So at 15, I had this almost woman kind of put this on my heart, you need to do something, Teresa. You need to do something. And so I started to think about that, what can I do? Well, one of the things I did, I went back to my high school. It's an all-girls Catholic high school, but a difficult place sometimes to be Catholic and to be pro-life, Marian High School in Omaha, Nebraska. And I started to be a little more vocal about my faith and about what my beliefs were. And I started to realize that not all those girls believed what I did, and I started to put myself out there in that way. And then in 1993, when I was a senior, I got an entire busload of high school girls to go out and see JP2 in Cherry Creek. Was anybody there? Yeah, it was an incredible event. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people going to Colorado, all to descend on this huge park, and felt like Woodstock for Catholics. It was high school kids everywhere, college kids everywhere. It was just crazy. And here we all to see this one Pope, JP2. And at that time, did I know what JP2 really was and what he could give to the world? No, but I sure do now. And I'm sure glad that I was there in 1993. And that's me with my best friend, Megan. And Megan Macaulay Bover. And what's incredible is that Megan actually was my best friend in high school, and we stayed friends a really long time, but she died when she was 29, died actually when she turned 30, a breast cancer. Very much a St. Gianna story. She was pregnant with her 4th baby and found a mass in her breast, and then 2 years after that, she was gone. And that was my best friend from high school, but so she had a beautiful story and had a great impact on my life as well. There's just so many things sometimes that touch you. But I went on to go to college at Briarcliff in Iowa. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Briarcliff, small Catholic college. I started there with the very first ever women's soccer team at Briarcliff. I was the captain for all 4 years. I will go down in history as having the most yellow and red cards ever. That's my claim to fame. I will never be in the Hall of Fame. My sister, right here, Kathy, actually is in the Hall of Fame for soccer at Briarcliff, for actually doing good soccer. I just took people out. So, but this will continue my story of being convicted about women's health, because when I was a freshman, there was a young woman on my team who was a senior, and I found out through a friend that she was pregnant and that she was planning to have an abortion. And I was shocked, devastated, and thought, what do I do? This girl on my team, she's pregnant, she's gonna have an abortion. I just thought, this is not good, what can I do? And I didn't know her very well. I was a freshman. Freshmen don't talk to seniors, right? But I thought, I've gotta do something. So I found a way to get back to Omaha, Nebraska, because I had heard that she was gonna go to Omaha to have an abortion. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just gonna go to the clinic and I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna pray for this young woman. And so that's what I did. And interestingly enough, it was a fall morning, very cold, it was raining, and at the abortion clinic, this is the one that was on L Street, there was a very, very bright line that you could not cross. And if you crossed it, there were security people with vests, and they looked very angry, and you were going to be in trouble, which I had no intention, of course, to do that. But as I'm standing there praying, all of a sudden I look in the distance, way back at the back of the building where they bring in women to have the abortions, because they didn't want to bring them anywhere close to us praying. And I see this young woman. And I just felt compelled. And so I yelled her name. I just yelled her name. And from a very far distance, she turned and she saw me, looked at me, and then I was surrounded by security guards, and I was in a puddle and a mess on the ground. And that's all that happened. I went home, she went in the clinic, and I never spoke to her about it again. 3 years later, of course, she graduated and moved on for a long time. I'm playing one of my last soccer games at Briar Cliff, and I'm, after the game, talking to people on the field, and Briar Cliff is a cliff, so if you are in the bottom of the soccer field, you look up, and people are always walking down. And I look up, and here is her. This is this young woman. And she's walking down the hill, and she's walking like right towards me, and she's walking right to me, and she's walking with a young baby in her arms. And she walks up to me, and she says, "Teresa, this is my son, Zachary." She puts the baby in my arms. And I look at her, and then I knew. I was like, oh, like she remembered. She remembered I was there. She remembered I cared. And I thought to myself, this is what it means to be there for a woman. I mean, I didn't do anything, but it meant something to her. It meant a lot to her, because she came, she put a baby in my arms to show me it mattered. And so from that moment on, I just knew I wanted to help women. It mattered to me so much that I decided after I went through nursing school that I would just become a nurse practitioner, because I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to further my education. And I remember my peer advisor at the time was like, "Teresa, that is such a bad idea." She's like, "You are very, very convicted about your beliefs, and if you go into the women's health world, it's not going to be easy on you." And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right. I'm going to do it anyway." So I went back to University of Nebraska Medical Center, and it's a state school, and I signed up for their women's health and nurse practitioner program, and I started to learn all about women's health. And guess what I learned? I learned that in women's health, we have this magic pill, and it treats everything. And so when we talk about every disease, like irregular cycles and endometriosis and all the things, we would always get to the part where you're like, "Okay, well, what do we do for that?" And they would always be like, "Well, you give them oral contraceptive pills." And then we get to the next one, like, "Well, you give them oral contraceptive pills." And the next thing you'd be like, "Oh, and you give them oral contraceptive pills." And for a while, you're like, "Gosh, I didn't know that this thing that we use for birth control was used for also every female condition ever that existed." And so I would ask the question, well, what if someone doesn't want to be on birth control for whatever their problem is? And there was never a good answer. It was always like, that's just what we do, is we just use birth control pills. And it just never settled right to me. I didn't even understand it. Literally, I was ignorant. I didn't know anything about my own body. I didn't know anything about my own cycle, for that matter. I was completely oblivious. But it didn't seem right to me that what we used to give women to suppress their fertility was used as a medical treatment for everything. And so it just made me want to look further. And so when I was finishing up that program, I had to find alternative clinical experiences to some of the clinical experiences that they wanted me to do. I was not going to do, go into a Planned Parenthood and and give care. That wasn't going to be something I would ever do. So I had to find my own clinical experiences. And I ended up in a place in Lincoln, Nebraska called Holy Family Clinic. And there was a Dr. Paul Hayes, OBGYN there at the time. And he taught me an alternative way to practice women's health, something called naprotechnology. There's a sweet nurse there. Her name is Rosemary. Rosemary, I think, still teaches Creighton Model. But this is so long ago. But Rosemary's like, Teresa, come here. She's like, do you know how to chart? I'm like, no. She's like, okay, I'm going to teach you. So Rosemary would pull me aside after I do my clinicals with the doctor, and she would teach me how to chart my cycle. And holy Moses, like, I did not realize, like, anything about my cycle. And I was somebody who, at the time, I had really bad PMS, actually, but I had no idea it was even PMS. I had a list of symptoms that my now husband, he was like, you need to figure out what's wrong with you. You don't feel good, you're tired all the time, you got like issues, and he's like, you just need to see a doctor, right? I don't know if the guy's ever told you that, but I was like, yeah, whatever, And so I wrote down all these symptoms, and I went to my doctor, my primary care doctor, and I was like, yeah, I wrote all these down. I don't feel all this way all the time, but I do feel this way a lot. She's like, well, I think you're depressed. This is the other thing that we always give to women, right? When they've got a problem, is like, we've got either one thing, it's birth control, or we've got another thing, it's antidepressants, and then you're good. And I was like, I just know I'm not depressed. I know that wasn't it. So I was like, that just doesn't seem right. So I never took the antidepressant. But sure enough, I started charting my cycle, and I realized, oh, this is just PMS. It's just really bad PMS. And then eventually I got my hormones checked, and yes, I had terrible hormones, because you can never have good hormones when you work night shift as a nurse and go to graduate school at the same time. So your hormones will always be bad. So life changed fast for me after I became a nurse practitioner. I married my husband, Dan, and then we started having babies while I got my first job with Dr. Thomas Hilgers at Pope Paul VI Institute. And I did natural childbirth for the first time, and it wasn't as happy as I wanted it to be in the moment, but Dan was really happy that we had a baby, so that was all good. And then our family just kept growing. So this is my family, as drawn by my son, Joshua. And this is my family now. My 8 children, Anna, Isaac, Jude, Brendan, Daniel, Rachel, Fulton, and Joshua. Of course, I think they're the greatest kids ever, and they really are the greatest kids ever. I love them all. So that's my family. This is, again, my mom, such an incredible influence on me. Another influence on me was Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is like my nursing heart. Like, I love everything of Mother Teresa. But my mom, I just want to show you this picture because I think it's super cool. So my mom, when I got married, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer 9 months before I married Dan. And I thought my mom would not be here. My mom is still here. Unfortunately, although she survived stage 3 ovarian cancer, my mom developed Alzheimer's at the young age of 68, and my mom is still alive with Alzheimer's. But in honor of her, my oldest daughter, Anna, got married last fall, and my oldest daughter, Anna, takes care of my mom. So do I. So does my sister. So do my brothers. We all take care of my mom. And so in honor of her, number one, my daughter, Anna, if you can see, wore my wedding dress. And you can see I wore my mother's dress for her wedding. Because why wouldn't you, if you could? In fact, what happened was Anna was like, I really love your wedding dress. She's like, I don't know if it'll ever fit me, but she's like, can we just pull it out of the bag and look at it? And so we did. And when I opened the bag up, my mom's dress was in there. And I looked at it and I thought, why not? Why not just recreate the whole thing? And so that's what we did, and it was very beautiful. And this is, again, if you know, this is just sweet, but this is the last note that my mom wrote to my daughter. And again, you can't understand what it's like to lose somebody over many years. But just seeing her handwriting. But my daughter's so sweet. Right before I'm sorry, I think I'm emotional because right before coming on, my daughter was messaging me that she was with my mom and my dad today. And my dad is really struggling because he still takes care of her for all these years. I mean, she's had it for over 15 years. And she has the mind of a 1-year-old right now. This is my mom now. She's the sweetest thing ever. And I bought her this baby because she has always loved babies. And that's just a doll. It looks really real. But she carries that baby every day of her life around, but she is gone. She has the mentality of a little child, you know. She's as sweet as can be, and I made a deal with the Blessed Virgin Mary because she prayed more than any human I have ever met in my entire life. And I told Mary, I'm like, listen, my mom would have made a deal, I know, with God. She would have said, if it takes 20 years of suffering to make sure that all my family gets to heaven, sign me up for 50. That's what she would have done. And I said, okay, if my mom made a deal with you, I'm making a deal with Mary, and you keep my mom sweet to the very end. And she stayed very, very sweet, thank God, because no one wants to see their mom, you know, kind of turn sour. So I've always been really grateful for that. So I really love helping women see their own dignity. And so every time I speak to a group, like that's all I want is I want women to know how beautiful and how whole they are. One of the things that like I learned from John Paul II was that we have this like image within us that really is the divine life of God. And when we can see that, and then you can integrate that into your own like biology as a human person, it changes everything. It changes everything. Like I can't explain how clear it becomes that what we're living as Christians in this world is so right. And that, you know, we really need to help people understand how beautiful God designed us. One time I was at a talk with young people, and I asked them, what do you think the definition of like the dignity of woman is? Maybe it was I asked them, what do you think the definition of holistic feminism was? And this young man gave this definition: treating women as a beautifully orchestrated collaboration of body, mind, and soul with respect to restoring and supporting the God-given functions and process. And I was just like, man, drop the mic, dude. You got it. Like, why would we not support like the way God made our bodies? And this is why it's so frustrating to me that we use birth control to treat every human female problem we have. Like, why wouldn't we want to support the way it was meant to be? Instead, we say, women, your bodies are not good. Like, you just need to suppress who you are as a woman. And that's wrong. And it's a lie. And it's Satan's lie. Because it goes to the deepest parts of who we are, again, in terms of our fertility. God does not want life and love. Satan does not want life, right? So he attacks at this part of us. And so, you know, this is where I want women to know how beautiful and how incredible their God-given feminine design is. So again, we went to Seek, and this is just, you know, amazing. I just never would have thought, you know, after working at Pope Paul VI for 20 years with Dr. Thomas Hilders, which was amazing. After I left there, I knew that I wanted to take my outreach in a different way. And so I started this podcast with Jamie, of course, and you know, we're on track to hit 1 million listens by the end of 2025. And this, every week of my life, I get an email that says, your podcast has changed my life. How amazing is that? Your podcast has changed my life. Because women don't know how their bodies work. And when they listen to the podcast, they're like, holy Moses, just like I said holy Moses when I charted my cycle for the first time. You know, learning about your body as a woman is an incredible experience in terms of learning who you are. So again, I encourage you to share it with all of your lady friends, even guys. A lot of guys have listened to it and found even just the general health stuff to be helpful. There's a couple of guy podcasts on there. There's one that's called a podcast that every guy should listen to. It's very well done by a guy named Dave Getterman. So we had this incredible experience at Seek. We gave away 100 of my Happy Girl books. You can see from the pictures, like these young women, I mean, these women love learning about their hormones, and they absolutely eat it up. So again, Happy Girl is a great book. It's a great foundation in learning about your body. So any young woman, please hand them that book. It is definitely something that would bring them a lot of good information. So I want to talk a little bit about perimenopause. Is that okay with you guys? Do you want to talk about perimenopause with me? Because many of you will be, I mean, all of us will get there, right? Sooner or later. And perimenopause is an important thing. I really am very passionate about a lot of things, but one of the things I'm really passionate about is women understanding hormone replacement therapy, because there's a lot of confusion about it. And this will go into even kind of like hormone replacement therapy, even for women who are in cycles. So you'll learn a lot in this as well. So I'm going to, of course, we always struggle with eating. I'm going to go back to this, but I'm going to start with the perimenopause stuff, because I think this is really important. So again, we have this reproductive life cycle as a woman, and we start our periods around 12, but of course, unlike men, we lose that. We lose that reproductive power, in a sense. By the time we're 51, 52, average age is about 51, 52. And in the 7 to 10 years even before that, there are changes in our hormones. And some of them are not fun. And some of them are worse by the fact that, we have all of these like endocrine system disruptors and chemicals in our environment and all of these things that are affecting our hormones. So what do we do about that? And a lot of women are wondering, like, why am I tired? Why is my hair falling out? Why am I gaining weight, especially maybe around here, Like, what can I do about these changes that just seem to kind of come out of the blue? And I'm not saying it's easy, but there are a lot of things you can do to help. And there's a lot of things that you need to know in terms of what is important past 50 for having a healthy and long life. So menopause, so you're saying that I'm looking forward to 10 years of hell followed by death. Am I missing something? Like, this is some people's experience. I mean, I've had women tell me their menopause was absolute hell, but it doesn't have to be. And I feel like for 20 plus years, we have let women suffer because we told them that hormones were bad. When hormones are not bad. Hormones are life. Hormones are so good. We just have to understand what is a good hormone and what is not a good hormone. And so the average duration of the symptoms of menopause is 7.5 years. That's the average. That means that many women have symptoms of perimenopause to menopause longer than that. So it's a lot of years of just changes in our cycle. Some of the things that happen, even in our brain, we start to lose, because our hormones are all a symphony together. So when we lose progesterone and our estrogen levels change, it actually can help change the chemicals in our brain. So we end up having more sadness and anxiety. And I don't know if anyone has experienced that as they've gotten a little bit older, but sometimes, our mood changes. We tend to just kind of feel blah or a lack of motivation, and that can be really due to some of the decreases, especially in progesterone, which affect the serotonin levels in your brain and the GABA receptors. So this is something that we really need to address. In fact, I heard a statistic that was really depressing. It was, that women in menopause, about 50% experience some sort of anxiety and depression. So it's something we definitely want to address. I got stuck there. Weird. I know you're not my last slide. So this is kind of the conventional treatments. A lot of times, again, and this goes to, again, back to the fact that we use a lot of medication in medicine in general. But for perimenopause to menopause, a lot of times, people still are recommending birth control pills for a lot of issues. Sometimes women have heavier periods or bleeding issues in perimenopause, and so they oftentimes get put on synthetic hormones to address that. And it's unnecessary in most cases to put women on synthetic hormones. But these are the conventional things to do. SSRIs, again, we just talked about how anxiety and mood disorders in perimenopause to menopause is common. Vaginal estrogen is used. That's about the only estrogen most doctors feel comfortable with, and not even that sometimes. Gabapentin, which is basically for neuropathic pain. Ablations or other surgical procedures to deal with these symptoms. And you think, gosh, is that really what we have to do for women? Is this really kind of how we deal with perimenopause to menopause? Could there be a better way? Could there be a more holistic way than that? Absolutely. And a lot of times it's just like anything. You have a deficiency in a vitamin, what do? We need to correct that deficiency. You have a deficiency in a hormone, what do we need to do? We need to correct that deficiency. And there's certain lifestyle things, yes, that can help, but nothing is more direct and more helpful than actually replacing the hormones sometimes. And so what is hormone replacement therapy? It's a medical treatment used to treat hormonal imbalances. And the FDA has approved hormone therapy to help with these symptoms in menopause, but many doctors are afraid to prescribe them, or they don't know how. And in medical school, they don't get good training on how to deal with perimenopause to menopause. And so oftentimes women are kind of left just kind of bearing through it, which is not good. So estrogen, so important to your body. So important to your body. And when you're pregnant, like this young woman here, right? Like when you're pregnant, you feel good in a lot of ways because your hormone levels are so high, like your progesterone, your estrogen is so high, and women feel mentally usually really clear and good. And yes, they're uncomfortable at times, but there's no ups and downs and PMS with their hormones. So estrogen and progesterone are really good and powerful hormones. They're particularly good for the brain, they're good for the bones, and they're good for the heart. And, they help with our metabolic health. They improve our energy and our mood. They help with, of course, wrinkles in our skin. So sign me up every day to get some estrogen for my skin, right? We don't turn into raisins, but so there's just so many good functions that estrogen have. And then progesterone too. Progesterone is probably the hormone I use the most in perimenopause because I call it the great stabilizer. All of you women out there that have ever experienced really terrible periods where you bleed really heavy or you have prolonged bleeding, and again, doctors just offer surgery or they offer birth control pills. Progesterone, natural progesterone, can actually fix that really quite easily. It's just that doctors don't know how to prescribe it. But it's good for bone growth, it's good for calming. Progesterone has an anti-anxiety effect, so it makes us feel like we want to rest, like we can sleep, like we feel calm again. It stabilizes, like I said, menstrual bleeding when it's out of control. And we want to make sure that what we understand is that there are synthetic hormones and there are bioidentical hormones. And you do not want synthetic progesterone. That's something called medroxyprogesterone, or otherwise referred to as progestins. So just be very, very careful that if you go to a doctor and they prescribe you progesterone because you asked for it, that you make sure you get the good stuff. And the good stuff will always be the word of the hormone. It will be just progesterone. It won't have anything else attached to it. It's just progesterone. And it's available in any pharmacy. So why is there so much confusion around hormone replacement therapy? Well, there was this very large study called the Women's Health Initiative. And this study really changed the landscape of how doctors feel about hormones. And that's because it led to these misconceptions. 1, that hormone therapy caused breast cancer. 2, that hormone therapy causes heart attacks and strokes. 3, that hormone therapy leads to dementia. And 4, that hormone therapies, other natural treatments or medications are better to combat symptoms of perimenopause to menopause. And all of these were not true. They were really all debunked, and they have been debunked. But because someone got a little jump the gun when it comes to the media, what happened is that there was a report that was released to the media before even anybody got to peer review this study in large extent that said that estrogen caused breast cancer. And that went everywhere. And we haven't been able to put that genie back in the bottle until now. So it's taken a lot of time to get people to understand that estrogen actually is not linked to breast cancer. And this book right here is a very incredible book that if you read it, you will understand everything that I do in terms of estrogen and breast cancer. It's called Estrogen Matters. I really recommend it to all of my patients. Anybody who's like, I've heard estrogen causes cancer, they're not sure, their friends all tell them, don't go on those hormones are associated with cancer. You gotta read Estrogen Matters. It will change your life. But this study was very flawed, and the reason why it was flawed is because it had a lot of participants. It was the largest randomized controlled trial ever done by the National Institutes of Health. So it was very good in that respect, but the average study participant was 63 years old. So these were women that were older. And so they took women, and they took the average woman, and they put them on synthetic hormones, basically similar to birth control at a very old age. So many of these women didn't do well with the hormones because they had not been on hormones in a very, very long time. And they were given, like I said, we don't even use these hormones anymore. If you've heard of the word Premarin, that's what they were given, and these are very strong hormones. 80% of them were overweight or obese. A third of them already had hypertension. Half were either current or previous smokers. And 3/4 of them had a BMI over 25. So they were not healthy people. Therefore, when they gave them hormones, there were people that had problems, not necessarily even related to the hormones, but because of the population, all of that got recorded as side effects related to the hormones. The crazy thing is that the estrogen related to the breast cancer thing was a complete myth. In fact, I'll say this first, again, cardiovascular-wise, women are 7 times more likely to die of heart disease than breast cancer. And so what they have surmised is that over 85,000 women have died of heart disease because they were taken off of hormone replacement therapy. Because estrogen protects the heart. And so when these women were taken off hormones in the early 2000s, their heart started to harden. Their vessels started to harden. And so what you want to know is that estrogen protects the heart from cardiovascular disease when it is taken at the appropriate time. And that is really good news. So again, hormone therapy risks, including breast cancer, were statistically not significant. In fact, they had 2 randomized controlled trial groups. The one group that took the estrogen only, because the women had hysterectomies in that group, had less breast cancer, actually almost 30% less breast cancer. I'm going to say that again. The group that took estrogen only, and it was the synthetic kind of estrogen, had almost 30% less breast cancer, and that was never reported to the media. The group that was on the synthetic estrogen with progestin, 2 synthetic hormones, had 1 more breast cancer per 1,000. And that's what got reported to the media, that there was a link between estrogen and breast cancer. So again, this was really, really one of the biggest kind of travesties in healthcare that's ever been seen. All right, HRT is by far the most clinically significant and successful treatment for all menopause symptoms. No other treatments, no over-the-counter medicines, no herbs, no supplements will ever compare to actually using estrogen. And this is what's really sad, is I can prescribe a natural vaginal estrogen to a woman, and she's gonna get a package insert that if she opens it up, it's going to say that she has an increased risk of endometrial cancer, that she could get dementia, she could have an increased risk of stroke or blood clot, she could have an increased risk of cancer, all of these terrible things, and none of them are true, and no doctor even believes that they're true. This is vaginal estrogen. It doesn't even get absorbed systemically. But this is on every package insert going home to women who are taking these hormones. So it's really unfortunate for me as the healthcare professional to try to convince people that these hormones are safe when they open up the package insert and this is what they see. And many times they're just like, I'm gonna throw that away. It doesn't sound good. Okay, you wanna be aware of a lot of things, but if there are things that I think are most important for you as women, it would be your stress, trying to avoid inflammation, and that goes into nutrition mostly. I'm gonna go back here, and then avoiding xenoestrogens. If I could tell you to read another book that I think is super profound, and I think you really will enjoy it, and I listened to it on the way up here. Is this book right here. It's called Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means. Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means. If you get a chance to read this book, it's really, really good. And she is a Stanford-trained traditional medical doctor who has now left traditional medicine because she realized that traditional medicine is not giving people health. Traditional medicine is good for putting out fires. If you have an appendix that's about to burst, they can take out your appendix and save your life. But in terms of making you healthy as a human being, traditional medicine has very little to offer you. And especially in a world that is now laden with toxic chemicals and ultra-processed foods. So this is a really good read. And from a nutritional standpoint, you know, we have to get back to eating real food. And you guys probably do a much better job than I do. I mean, I feel like sometimes, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like in the city, there's just so much fast food everywhere and so much crap. But it is really hard to get away from it, but somehow we have got to get back to eating real food again. It is why 80% of the population right now is overweight or obese. 80% of the population is overweight. 80% of the population is overweight or obese. So we have a huge problem of over energy. We are not in energy balance. And we have to get our insulin levels under control because that is what is leading to chronic disease. So when we are over-consuming energy and our body is not using it, our bodies has a hormone called insulin. And that insulin gets pushed out over and over and over again, but it's not being used. And so we are getting insulin resistant because the cells are being like, I've seen you 1,000 times, I don't know what to do with you anymore. I've shoved you into every place possible. And now I'm gonna store fat around your organs. We've got now, like, I think it's over 20% of teenagers have fatty liver disease. So we've got a huge problem. And it's an addiction, unfortunately. Food is an addiction. It's involved in everything. I mean, most of us will probably tomorrow is it tomorrow the Super Bowl? Yeah. I mean, eating a bunch of ultra-processed foods for the Super Bowl, but it is hard to get away from it. But it is the most important decision that you can make is to get your nutrition in better balance. I am a huge fan of getting more omega-3 fatty acids, and I really think that everybody should be on an omega-3 fatty acid supplement as well. What is the other thing that you can do for your longevity or health? You want to train to be a badass 65-year-old. I have a lot of women come into my office, and they're sad ladies, because they're in their late 30s or they're in their 40s, and they're like, I'm not doing anything different, and my body's changing, and I'm gaining weight for no reason. A lot of sad women. And I try to tell them, like, I understand it's super frustrating, but I want you to have a paradigm shift. Because you are almost going to be 50 soon, and guess what? That means you're going to be 55 soon, 60 soon, 65 soon, 70 soon. That is coming for you around the corner. You know what? You don't need to shame yourself anymore about your body. You don't need to keep up with the 20-year-olds anymore. You need to train to be a badass 65-year-old now. Because if you want to be the grandma that's out there playing kickball, out there like taking your kids to the zoo and all those things, you have to train for it. Because I'm telling you, there is a huge divergence of health when it comes to 50-year-olds. All of a sudden, it looks like this. And one way is one way that you don't want to go, and the other way is a way that you do want to go. But it takes a concerted effort on all of your part to be able to do that. And exercise and maintaining muscle is the biggest predictor of longevity out there. So your ability to, squat, lift heavy, is what will tell you how long you will live. So you're going to have to get at it. And do you know what the most popular Hormone Genius episode in 2024 was? Healthy Women Lift Heavy. That was the episode listened most to on the Hormone Genius in 2024, which made me very excited. That means the message is getting out. You've got to start exercising. I was talking to Katie's mom, lovely lady right over here. She plays pickleball. She lifts, she does stairs where she puts weights on her back while she does stairs. And look at her. She's going to be, out there with her grandkids till she's 85, 90, and probably beyond. Because she's active and she's staying healthy. So there's a great example. But unless you do it, again, it's when you look at your parents, I don't know about you, but when I look at my parents, I think, heck no. I mean, my mom's situation, that wasn't her fault. The woman walked every day of her life, and she was growing kombucha juice in the back bedroom before kombucha ever hit grocery stores, people. I'm serious. We had scobies all over the place. I didn't even know. I was like, I didn't know what my mom was doing, but now I'm like, man, she was ahead of her time. Okay, there is nothing more important besides exercise and nutrition than sleep. I don't know about you guys. I had a lot of kids, but I am making up for lost time still. Like, there are nights that I'm in bed by 9:30. I fall asleep, wake up at 7:30, check my Oura ring. I was in bed for 11 hours of sleep. And my husband's like, you got enough sleep, Teresa. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, because you remember I raised like a whole bunch of babies and I lost probably like 8,000 hours. So I'm still making up for it. You have to sleep. And it makes such a huge difference. And if you're not sleeping well, there is lots of things that you can do to help. Progesterone being one of them. So if you're perimenopause and you are not sleeping, particularly like in your premenstrual phase, come hit me up for some progesterone. I'm telling you, you'll sleep like a baby. It is such a great hormone for sleep, but there's a lot of things that you can do for sleep. If you want to look easily online, I share it sometimes with my patient, Andrew Huberman, who has a podcaster and a neuroscientist. He has a sleep kit, a sleep tool kit that you can get online, and it has a lot of good supplement ideas. I have a couple of them listed here as well. I love L-theanine. I love magnesium glycinate. I love not sharing my comforter with my husband. It has changed my life. I don't know what it was. We listened to a podcast one time, and it was an English guy, and he was like, get your own duvet, and you'll sleep like a baby. I'm not doing an English accent appropriately, so I'm embarrassed that that's recorded. But get your own comforter or your own blanket. It will change your life. Do not share anymore. I'm just telling you. It is a good thing. Stress, like I said, is so important to get a handle on. I know it's cliche because everybody has stress. Here's another book by Dr. Isabella Wentz, who's actually an incredible thyroid guru, but she has some adrenal health information as well. People a lot of time ask about cortisol and testing for adrenals. I would just tell you it's not real easy to do. And if you just really focus on those 4 things, nutrition, exercise, sleep, and just doing some things to reduce your stress, that's the most important things that you can do to get your cortisol back in balance. So I wouldn't necessarily go searching for a bunch of tests for it. And then, you just, relationships are so important, and you want to live in communion with other people. That is what our purpose is. And the body, in fact, and only the body, is capable of making visible what is invisible, the spiritual and the divine. It has been created to transfer into the visible reality of the world the mystery hidden from eternity in God, and thus we are to be a sign of it. This is what I tell young people about their faith, that you are an image bearer of the inner life of God, that we are a mirror to other people of who God is in his inner being, that marriage, family, giving birth to children is an image of the Trinitarian type of love that God is, that matrimony and marriage and family life is the highest call of our church, and that we need to help our young people see that they can do this. They can go out, they can find a spouse, they can build their family, and they can change the world just by having a beautiful, good family. That is how we will change the world. So tell your young people, don't wait to get your career. I mean, don't stop believing this lie of this American dream thing, that they have to have all their things in order before they ever get married. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it is preventing our culture from thriving, and it's preventing people from being happy. Like, we want people to find a true mate to commune with and to have families. It really is how we change the world. All right, I probably talked too long, so I'm going to open it up now to questions of all sorts. So you guys can ask me anything. I will tell you anything. I promise I will not hold anything back.
Okay, question. Would you recommend the Aura Ring and why?
About the Aura Ring. So I have an Aura Ring, and all the college girls love to ask me about it. Do I recommend it? No, not necessarily. It's expensive. I got it because I thought it'd be cool to do a podcast on it at some point. And do I love it? Yeah, I think it's super cool to track all my data and to see. I love showing girls my biphasic temperature shift of my cycle. I love looking at my sleep scores and seeing that I got great sleep. In fact, when I got back from the March for Life, I got sick. And my Aura Ring told me that I was getting sick before I knew I was getting sick. It did. It said, hey, we see that your biometrical parameters or whatever are messed up. You need to go into rest mode. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So it gives a lot of data, and it's super fun, and it goes with a lot of what we call femtech devices. So femtech is a $1 industry now of people who are really interested in natural and holistic health, who want data and want to be able to kind of sync their bodies to all sorts of information. And so yeah, I mean, do I think it's fun? Do I think people should go out and plan their families using the Aura Ring? No, not necessarily, not that, but I think it's fun, and if it motivates somebody to be healthier, awesome. I would say this, and I wonder if this will come out verbally on a podcast. I think it did. Jamie got an Aura Ring because she's a total fear of missing out girl. When she saw it, she's like, you got an Aura Ring? And within 2 weeks, she's like, I got an Aura Ring too, Teresa. And I was like, oh, okay. And within a month of wearing it, it went off. Why? Because Jamie is a more anxious person than I am, and the information was causing her anxiety. She would look at it, and it would say, you slept really bad. It actually doesn't say that, but that's what she heard in her head, that you are really doing a bad job of taking care of yourself today, And so she was in her head about the fact that it was telling her these things. If I get a bad night's sleep and I look at it, I'm like, well, it's a bad night's sleep, move on, right? So you have to know yourself and know if more information is helpful to you or more information could cause you more stress and anxiety. And that's, of course, individual.
I have an Aura ring, and I wear it sometimes, but not always, because sometimes it gives me stress and sometimes it doesn't. So,
Hi there, my name's Haley, and I just read Good Energy and The Menopause Myth, and I feel like it's kind of a spoiler, but in The Menopause Myth, where they explain all the research you just explained to us, at the end they're like, so when you do hormone replacement therapy and you have a uterus, and if you're really doing these bioidentical hormones, you're gonna have a monthly bleed. And I'm wondering if you could comment on when you're doing HRT, are you still having pretend cycles? I'm curious about that.
Okay, so just a refresher, again, bioidentical hormone. If you get a bioidentical hormone, it just, the way that you know is the word is the hormone. If the hormone on the bottle says estradiol, that's bioidentical. If it only says estradiol, if the word on the bottle is progesterone, that's a bioidentical hormone. And you can always ask the pharmacist to be sure, but sometimes they're not even aware of the difference. So, but you just want to make sure that you get a bioidentical hormone. The only reason why someone would still cycle when they're taking hormone replacement therapy is if they were already cycling. So post-menopause women that are not having periods anymore, when they use hormone replacement therapy, should not be cycling. There would be no reason for that. All you're doing, as I like to say, is again, when your ovaries go into menopause, they ain't making any hormones anymore, ever. Like they're not coming back to life, they are done. And so what we're trying to do is take your zero hormones and move them up off the basement floor. We're not trying to make you a 20-year-old, we just don't want you to be a zero-old in hormones. So we're trying to move those hormones up, but you're going to get a combination of estrogen or estradiol and progesterone on a daily basis, and that would be the foundation of hormone replacement therapy. Now there's other hormones like testosterone that can be used in perimenopause and menopause, and that's a whole different kind of subject, but that can be very helpful for women sometimes too. If a woman is in perimenopause and she's still cycling, many times what we do is we only use the hormone progesterone, because progesterone can still cooperate with the cycle and still help with a lot of perimenopausal symptoms. It is rare that you would really need to ever use estrogen when a woman is still cycling. And the reason is because her ovaries are still making estrogen, and we don't want to over-estrogenize her, because that doesn't feel good either. And so you have to be careful about, and we test hormones, of course, and we know like where women are at. There is times when I use a lot vaginal estrogen in perimenopause because vaginal dryness can be an issue, but it's rare that I actually use a lot of other estrogen in perimenopause when women are still cycling. But post-menopause women do not need to cycle anymore, and they should not. There's one way back there, but I see there's a question way back in the last table.
okay, there is still food and wine left, so I expect you all to take some before you leave.
What type of estrogen do you typically prescribe? Do you prescribe oral, patches, pellets? What is your preferred prescription?
Is this just annoying to talk? Is it better actually without the microphone? It's better without? Better with? Okay. The reason why there's a preference for using transdermal is because when estrogen is taken by mouth, it has to be processed through the gut and then through the liver. When we actually process estrogen through the liver, what happens is you can make what we refer to as clotting factors that come from the estrogen. That just means that it's potentially going to increase your risk of blood clots. And I say potentially because it's a really, when we're talking about menopause and hormone replacement therapy, it's almost, the risk of it is so minute, but at least it's theoretically there. So if you're going to be just the safest as possible, avoiding the gut means you avoid any chance that estrogen turns into a clotting factor. And so that is the preference. So I try to encourage women to use a transdermal form of estrogen. In the regular pharmacy, there are patches, again, and gels, but a lot of times I'll compound it into a cream if a woman prefers using a cream, and you can, dose it any way you like when you use a compounding pharmacy, and that's kind of nice. But I do have some women who are just like, I don't want a cream, I hate the patches, just give me a pill. And as long as they understand and they don't have any really big risks for blood clots, like they haven't had a blood clot themselves, they don't have a bunch of blood clots in their family, it's really not a problem. I just make sure that I tell them there's potentially, this possible risk, and also, again, this preference for the transdermal because of avoiding the gut, if that makes sense.
Yes, what's your suggestion with neuropathy pain?
So it depends on what the cause, I guess, of the neuropathic pain is, because there would be a lot of reasons for that. I can tell you a couple things. When I have somebody who has chronic pain, number one, I always want to make sure that I do really good blood work, because people don't realize how many simple things can be fixed when you get your nutrients in order. So for example, somebody who has a lot of pain, tingling pain in their hands and feet, I can't tell you how many people I have found who have had low B12. I had a woman who had Parkinson's and she had pain in her feet all the time, and she had gone to her doctors for years for it. All I did was check her B12, found that she had a B12 that was in the tank, gave her B12 shots, and she never had pain again. So we can't underestimate sometimes the simple things that can be done to help people's quality of life. So having really thorough blood work is very helpful for people, especially in the area of nutrients, thyroid, hormones, and all those things. Secondly, from a standpoint of inflammation, we have to ask what other sources of inflammation are in the body, or where is inflammation potentially coming from? Again, is there lifestyle things? Is there nutritional things that could be done to reduce inflammation in the body? I have this particular combination of using fish oil and turmeric twice a day for anybody who has any sort of joint pains, and that works really well. So I have people combine fish oil and turmeric, which is a spice, right? It's a natural anti-inflammatory, twice a day, and that works as a really nice anti-inflammatory. Lastly, I have a really good podcast episode on low-dose naltrexone. And low-dose naltrexone is a unique and novel anti-inflammatory that works an incredibly unique way with the immune system to reduce inflammatory markers and to stop chronic pain. So I've had people come to me who have chronic pain from car accidents, who have just chronic joint pains or fibromyalgia, and low-dose naltrexone for them can be quite a miracle treatment. But I would encourage you, if you look up Hormone Genius and low-dose naltrexone, you can, or LDN is what it's referred to, you can find out about that medication. That is good for, again, anybody who suffers from a chronic pain issue or any sort of an autoimmune condition as well.
What is the most common hormonal disorder that you've been finding in young women, like PCOS, endometriosis, and have you seen an increase of that in young women over the years? And if so, what do you think the causes of that, if you have any ideas?
Yep, so I would say by far the most common hormonal endocrine imbalance that we're seeing is what we call polycystic ovarian syndrome. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is a disorder of the endocrine system when androgens, which are male-like hormones, and insulin levels are thrown off balance, which throws a lot of other things off balance in the body. And it has been around for a very long time, but we are now at the point where we're seeing almost 20% of young females having polycystic ovarian syndrome. I often say to women who come and I look at their labs and I look at their history, and I'm like, well, you do look like you fall under the spectrum of polycystic ovarian syndrome, but when you look at that person, I often think to myself, I don't think this is classic PCOS. I think that what we have is now a situation where we have so many endocrine system disruptors in the environment that we are seeing some sort of environmental polycystic ovarian syndrome, but it's not really PCOS. That it's being caused by what is being, our bodies are being exposed to. And I think it's going to be ever an increasing problem. We have an increase in infertility. It used to be 1 in 8, now it's 1 in 6 in America. Endometriosis is on the rise, but I don't see that as much, and that's only because so many times it takes about 12 years on average for a woman to get the diagnosis correct on endometriosis, so that's part of the issue with that. But it's definitely polycystic ovarian syndrome. And again, if we have 80,000 chemicals in the environment that have a name to it, but we don't understand probably more than 8,000 of those chemicals. That's a huge problem. And so we have all of these things that we're being exposed to that we have no idea what they're doing. And they refer to them as xenoestrogens or hormone mimickers. And we're now seeing the effects of that. And I do think it contributes also to like what women feel in perimenopause and menopause as a very troubling metabolic problem. We're really finding women who they're trying everything and they're still not losing weight, they're eating better, they're exercising, and that's because, again, we have all of these things in the body. They're disrupting our ability of our cells to be able to work properly. And so the best thing that you can do is, again, get back to the basics, especially when it comes to nutrition. And if you don't already know, you can look at all of your personal care products by, looking at like Environmental Working Group, ewg.org. /skin deep. You can put in any of your personal products to find out if they're toxic. So you want to start getting away from nail polish, from anything scented or fragranted. You want to get rid of all of your scented candles and all of those plugins that go into the wall. You want to look at your environment and say, am I at all creating a more toxic environment that my body's being exposed to? Again, your largest organ in your body is your skin. So everything that you put on your skin literally goes directly into your bloodstream. And when your body sees it and it doesn't know what to do with it, what it does is it sends out danger signals everywhere. Like, what is this stuff? And over a period of time, what that leads to is the body's immune system going a little haywire, and that's what we call autoimmune disease. So in the last 100 years, autoimmune diseases have gone off the charts, in particular in women. And it makes you wonder, because women slather themselves in all sorts of toxic chemicals on a daily basis. Men don't do that as much. So you want to get, away from kind of any of those kind of toxic chemicals and just start to. You don't have to like throw everything out, but just slowly but surely, your laundry soaps, everything that you're using in your home, you should look at and think, can I get something cleaner than that? Can I just go back to using vinegar and lemon water and, kind of simple things to clean? All of that does make a difference. And I think that's what's causing what we are calling polycystic ovarian syndrome, even though I don't quite think that diagnosis is correct for everybody. Does that make sense? You bet. ewg.org. .org/skin deep. Deep, skin deep.
There's an app for ewg.org that you can put on your phone, and you can scan products when you're in the store, and they'll tell you how good or bad they are for you.
Could you explain how your thyroid and your hormones are correlated?
I got some water right here, yeah. Okay, so thyroid hormone and how that interplays with the rest of your hormones, basically. So it's complicated. Like I won't be able to do a good job of explaining like how they all perfectly work together. But your thyroid is one of the most important hormones that you have in your body. It regulates your heart rate. It regulates your body temperature. It regulates your skin moisture. It regulates your energy balance and metabolism. So it's an incredibly important hormone. It's produced right here, right around your trachea. It's a small, what they call butterfly-shaped gland. So all of you should just feel your thyroid right now. You should like put your finger across your trachea and slide down to get to like the lower third, and then swallow. Because your thyroid will kind of like move up and down a little bit as you swallow. And the thyroid is incredibly important, again, for mental health, metabolism. So many women, in fact, my sister was one of them. For years, my sister struggled with her weight, and she struggled with energy, and we all just thought she was lazy. It's terrible, but like everybody, we were all like, you're just lazy. You like to sit on the couch all the time, you know? And she was an incredible athlete, so she really wasn't lazy, but when she would be home, she'd just be like, so tired. And her hair was kind of brittle and dry. No one ever thought about her thyroid, but as a young woman, she had hypothyroidism. No one knew it. And it wasn't until I went through nursing school, and then like I had this like epiphany moment, and when I was looking at her, I'm like, I think you need to have your thyroid checked. And sure enough, her thyroid was like a total hot mess. You know, so it's really important to understand our hormones, because something as simple as a thyroid test, like there was a girl from Benedictine who came up and talked to me, and I looked at her and I'm like, you need to get your thyroid tested. You know, you just know, like when people, again, are tired and their skin is just dry and their hair is dry and they're gaining weight and they're depressed and all these things, you need to get your thyroid tested. And you need a good panel and a doctor that understands thyroid hormone. One of my favorite people to listen to is Peter Attia. He's a very brilliant doctor, but if you just want a really good overview of the endocrine system, just look up Peter Attia, A-T-T-I-A, an overview of the endocrine system. It's not super complicated, but he goes through the entire thyroid, reproductive system, menstrual cycle, and everything in terms of hormones, and it's just a very simple overview. But thyroid affects menstrual cycles, so if you have a low or high thyroid, you can have a messed up menstrual cycle. Low thyroid will cause heavy periods. High thyroid will cause your periods sometimes to completely stop or skip. And the most common reason for thyroid disorder in women is autoimmune disease. So women have a condition called Hashimoto's most of the time when they have low thyroid. And an autoimmune condition in and of itself is an inflammatory disorder. It's a systemic issue of the entire immune system, and so it should be looked at that way. That means that when I treat a patient with a thyroid issue, we don't just care about putting her on thyroid medicine. Like, we care about the whole person, and we care about all her hormones, right, too, because they work all together. So there's a lot of things that you can do for thyroid. Again, Isabella Wentz, that other book I had up there with adrenals, she's an expert in thyroid issues, so she's a really great resource for anybody who does suffer with a thyroid condition. Does that answer it, or is there any other questions with it? Oh, and here's the other thing about thyroid. Iodine, if you don't know, is an essential nutrient for your thyroid. So all of you that have switched to kosher salt and sea salt, you actually are probably missing iodine in your diet, because iodine otherwise comes from sea animals and stuff. There, in the United States in early 1900s was a huge thyroid epidemic. And there was a place in the United States they called the goiter belt. A goiter is when the thyroid enlarges because it's not functioning properly. And it was found by a very, very smart doctor and research scientist that it was due to iodine deficiency. So in the largest national public campaign ever done in the United States, they decided to add iodine into common foods that every American eats. So they put it in table salt. That's why we have iodized table salt. They put it in cereal, and they put it in bread. And they cured an epidemic of thyroid disease just by adding iodine into people's foods. But now we have kind of a milder form of low-grade hypothyroidism because people got rid of iodized salt. Plus, we have depleted nutrients in our soils due to herbicides and pesticides and all the crap that goes into the soil. So you might want to think about, do I get any iodine in my diet? Because if you don't get iodine, I assure you, your thyroid cannot function. Good news is, like, for pregnant women, they put iodine into every prenatal vitamin to make sure women who are pregnant get the appropriate amount of iodine. So you can get a multivitamin with added iodine, or you can also look up foods that have iodine sources in it, or you can grab a bottle of sea kelp, and you can just take a sea kelp every once in a while.
To go along with the thyroid, mine was killed with radioactive iodine, and I was questioning if there was a good supplement or something that you could do instead of just the levothyroxine that you take every day.
It's a common question that people ask, like, do I have to take this medicine forever? And it's also a common question to wonder if levothyroxine is the only treatment for thyroid disorders. The answer is no, it's not the only treatment, although most doctors are only comfortable with levothyroxine or Synthroid. So you do have to find a more open-minded healthcare professional sometimes if you would like to try something different. I am one of those people. I happen to be very versed in the thyroid and what treatments are available. Most of the time, when you have had long-standing hypothyroidism and your thyroid gland is damaged, you will always have to take thyroid replacement. It's very, very rare that a patient has been on medicine for years would ever be able to, like, reverse that and, like, be able to just get by with a supplement. So I would never recommend that. In fact, I've had patients try. They've tried to convince me. There was a lady in my town in Omaha that was convincing a lot of my patients that if they just took this thing called ageless thyroid, their thyroids would be completely healed. And I was like, well, I don't mind you trying for a few weeks, and it never worked. So if you have a damaged thyroid, it's just a damaged gland. It's just not going to produce hormone. And it never makes sense to ever not treat your thyroid in that situation because, again, your thyroid hormone is one of the most important hormones to your body. In fact, you can't live without it. So you always want to remember that. Again, a lot of my patients who are what I would call borderline thyroid, that just means that the numbers that I'm seeing in their lab show some evidence that their thyroid is not quite efficient, but it's not yet what we call overt hypothyroidism. In that situation, sometimes I do use supplements because I know that probably they have microdeficiencies in things like iodine, zinc, selenium, copper, tyrosine, these things that are really important to thyroid function. And so there are some supplements that I can use, and then I'll repeat the levels and be like, did that work or did that not work? Again, there's some things about thyroid, again, unique to lifestyle, like there are things that disrupt the thyroid. Some people, gluten sensitivity is a real problem with the thyroid, and so removing gluten for some patients, especially who have the autoimmune condition, can be very helpful to reducing inflammation in the body and helping the thyroid work better, but that's not across the board always.
So there are sheets on your tables. They say a holistic approach to women's health, and those are resources that Teresa herself has recommended for you. She also has some cards about her podcasts and her website on the table, just so that you guys grab those before you leave.
So I've been on bioidenticals since 2010, and I was wondering, how long do you take them?
Till you're ready to go to Jesus. Yeah, I get that question a lot, and honestly, it's a personal choice with bioidentical hormones, but what I always tell patients is that there is no research that says that you have to stop hormones after a certain point. Even though there are some people who have claimed that there is, like you should stop at 5 years or you should never take hormones more than 10 years, there is no data to support that. Therefore, our current understanding is that if hormone therapies are a benefit to you, again, what we know for sure is the brain, the heart, and the bones, then if you want to keep those protections, then you have to keep taking the hormones. Your body within 5 years, and especially 10 years of stopping hormones, will go back to its old ways. Like it'll age and be at the point where you have now reversed the good that the hormones have done. And so in my mind, I think about it just myself, like I'll probably take hormones to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to mail it in, you know, and just let God take me at any point. That's kind of how I look at it. However, anybody could stop at any point. They could just be tired of taking the prescription. And I could see that, you know, you're just like, I'm so tired of taking this. And they might just make that decision. I just always want every woman to know that, again, when they stop their hormones, they're going to lose the benefit of them, and I think that's important. One of the other cards on your table that some of you got, I only had a certain amount, but it says something about what if there was another path for infertility, just so you know what that is. That also is just resources for people to find practitioners that could help their infertility. So take those with you too, and if you know of anybody who needs them, take all the stuff.
I was wondering if you could speak to bioidentical hormone use in younger women who are not perimenopausal or even trying to have children. I'm thinking of like teenage girls. We've been finding a lot of low progesterone and PMS type symptoms in the last part of the cycle, and we run into trouble in the clinic and the hospitals getting prescribed bioidentical hormones for them. Could you speak to that and what the doctors are afraid of, or where we could find that resource?
This is where it's really important to have, and this is why I care about educating young women. It's why every woman should have my book, because an educated patient can advocate for themselves. An uneducated patient will never be able to advocate for themselves because they don't have the words for it. So, you know, a lot of times, like, I remember, I mean, this isn't a young person, but like, I mean, I coach people and what to say, because frankly, if you use the word bioidentical, that can be a trigger word. There are trigger words that doctors don't like. Bioidentical is probably one of them. Natural is another one. Talking about diet, can I make any diet changes for this issue? That's a trigger for doctors, because they didn't learn any of that. And guess what? Doctors are in a power frame. And if they didn't learn it, then obviously it doesn't work. It's stupid, because I didn't learn it in medical school, so there's no way you're smarter than me, because I went to medical school. And that's not how every doctor approaches it, but some really do. And so sometimes you just have to find, I mean, it's hard because, again, Katie and I were talking, like, you guys don't have access to people like me. I mean, you can drive up and see me. That's totally fine, but I realize that's not great, you know, having to drive 3 hours to come see me. There are so many good ways to use progesterone in young people. PMS is one of them. I mean, PMS is real, and it can be really devastating to a young person's life when they are at home and like they can't they can't even function with their parents because they're so out of control with their emotions. Or they're not doing well in school because they get so anxious and so irritable before their period. Progesterone is such a beautiful hormone that it could really help that. And I've seen that so many times. Painful periods. When you have a girl who has painful periods, and one of the cards, I didn't pass it out because I gave away so many of them at Benedictine, but I have I call it my lava card, because like lava is like bleeding volcano. It's funny. Yeah. But it's my favorite period tips. So really, it's really what I tell my patients when they come see me and I have a girl who has really painful periods. I have them start with everything on this card. And if that doesn't work, which sometimes it does, they're very simple things, then we try natural progesterone, because natural progesterone is a relaxant. That's why when you're pregnant, you stay pregnant for 9 months, because progesterone keeps your uterus relaxed. So because progesterone is a relaxant, it can help with painful periods. So that's another beautiful way to use progesterone. PCOS. I use progesterone all the time with PCOS. If you don't have a period but once every 4 to 6 months, we got to fix that. And sometimes the only way to fix that is to get the body to cycle and to hear in their brain that they are cycling. And so there's just so many good ways to use bioidentical progesterone. But again, some of these doctors, they never even learned what progesterone is. All they know is birth control pill stuff. So again, you might be like, I really just want progesterone, and you end up getting a prescription that says medroxyprogesterone on it. Medroxyprogesterone. Total crap. Total crap. Throw it in the trash. It's not good. It causes depression, acne, weight gain. It's just terrible. But that's why it might tell you, the word is the hormone. The word is hormone. It's got to say progesterone, and that's how you know it's the real deal. And doctors I think they're starting to catch on, so I think they know it now, but you really have to be an advocate for yourself. And the other thing is that you have to know how to use it. Not all young girls chart. I'm so glad that there is many young women here that do, but not all girls understand their cycle. And you have to educate them how to use progesterone appropriately. You don't take it every day when you're cycling. So then they need instruction about how they're supposed to take that medicine, which is a great opportunity to instruct girls on how to chart their cycle and how to understand ovulation, or if they're not ovulating, how to tell them they're going to ovulate, and they need to be able to know how to interpret that. It's such a great opportunity to educate women about their bodies when you use natural progesterone. I joke that I should be sent on a cruise once a year for prescribing the most progesterone in the entire country, because I am certain that I do. But it's because it works so beautifully well, and there's no side effects that are dangerous. It doesn't cause cancer. It doesn't cause any problems. It's safe. The only side effect to it is sleepiness, which is a bonus for most people, especially perimenopause, or give it to me all day, every day. They're just sad they can't take it every day. So I tell you, once you get to menopause, then you can take it every day. But it's such a great hormone, so I can't speak highly enough of how great it is to be able to use. And in my book, The Happy Girl's Guide, I try to put case studies of everything that I could think about, where I was like, how can I show how I use progesterone instead of birth control pills to treat a condition, especially in young people, so that they can see, you didn't need birth control pills for PCOS. It's such a bad thing to do for PCOS. You don't have to have birth control pills for painful periods. You don't have to have birth control pills for irregular cycles or acne. And actually, just another tip so you guys have access to this, on my website, hormonegenius.com, all of you can get 3 free toolkits that have an incredible amount of information. One is on perimenopause, one is on acne, and the other one I'm pretty sure is thyroid. And they're all free, just toolkits with my favorite tips for those conditions. So just go to hormonegenius.com and put in your email, and you get those. And if you want my lava card, first come, first serve, there's about maybe 15 to 20 of my lava cards. So if you have a young woman in your life that you think would benefit, you can grab that up here. I also have a few of my clinic information too.
So on this sheet right here at the bottom, it says where to find a medical professional in line with these values. There are some telehealth options on there. So if you are looking for a different healthcare provider that maybe could provide you with progesterone or hormone replacement therapy, there are telehealth options on here that can serve you in Kansas. Teresa mentioned in our high school talk today that she is going to become licensed in Kansas, so she can do telehealth with women in Kansas, which is amazing. So it takes a little bit to become a nurse practitioner or a nurse in another state. Are there any other questions? Okay, we're going to do our door prizes. When I am done with door prizes, you can come visit the book stand, get more food and drink, and Teresa will be hanging out to answer any questions or if you want to visit with her at all, okay?
I know you guys are all like Kansas people. You love rodeos, right? So, I mean, I don't know, Nebraska people do too. My husband has a lot of great books. So just so you know, he writes middle school children's picture books and adult cozy mysteries. So there are all of those books over there. But one of his new releases is this lovely book called A Girl, a Ranch, and a Rodeo that is written for about a 9 to a 12-year-old girl in particular, but again, a boy could read it too. This just got launched, and Dan is trying to get people not only to buy it, but to do an Amazon review. When you're a self-published author, you don't have a publisher to market your books, and so you're throwing your book into Amazon and just praying to God that somebody sees it. And so what helps a self-published author is reviews. So if you do buy any of Dan's books tonight, I just ask if you could take a moment to go on Amazon and leave a very short review. It doesn't even matter what it says. But I really recommend this one. It doesn't. As long as you hit 5 stars and say, cool, you know. But this is a really good one. He's got awesome children's books that are all virtue-based in a sense, really lovely. So I just invite you to check him out.
All right, we're going to do some door prizes. The 3 things I wanted to happen tonight when I decided to do this was that you could come and not bring a thing. You could come and you could socialize, and that some women would win something. So we're going to do that right now. Yep, go ahead.
Sherry Eilert. Sherry Eilert.
All right.
Amanda Pounds. Valerie Strathman. Amanda Johnson.
I don't know. This fruit basket has to cost like $20, honestly.
Lori May. Tegan Walter.
It's the Hormone Genius podcast shirt. Tegan, this is for you.
Jennifer Huell.
Jennifer, you win the Holistic Feminism book.
Debbie Corville. Nancy Rush.
Nancy, you get the lotion and the candle. I have a Hormone Genius t-shirt.
Teresa Griffith.
This is a basket with Bible verses. Christy Mick put most of these together, by the way, so give her a high five. A planner and a car freshener.
Tynan Dowell.
And these are the biggies. I have 2 massages and a facial for y'all.
Kelsey Hesting.
Kelsey, you won a massage.
Kayla Vig.
Oh, you won the other massage. And here's the facial from NCK Skin Therapy.
Jerry Bates.
All right, ladies, thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope you learned one thing to take home to someone. Let's give a round of applause to Teresa. Ladies, before you leave, one more thing. Teresa talked a lot about charting your cycle, and if you don't know what that means, there is a woman named Samantha Hicks who's here tonight who could teach you how to chart your cycle so that you could learn more about your health. So if that is of interest to you, be sure to see Samantha. Thanks.